Hey, Sagelings. Well, I wanted to continue on talking about the degree system in many forms of Wicca and paganism. Now, each tradition has their own requirements. I am using one that is set by an Alexandrian Wiccan tradition. So do not use, you can use this as a reference, but it is not a template for all other forms of Wicca or paganism. Now, the requirements for a second degree are as follows. A second degree initiate is a witch, priestess, and elder of Alexandrian Wicca. This person has completed his or her apprenticeship and now can be considered an elder of the Alexandrian tradition and of the coven. The second degree priest, priestess is fully committed to the craft, has integrated craft ways into his or her life, and has reached a level where she is ready to take on the responsibility of a leader. She gives service to the coven and to the community, shares his or her self in the healthy acts as a mentor and example of pagan clergy, and leads and guides others to the best of their and his or her abilities. A second degree priest priestess will begin to help train others in the coven. After a period of a year and a day, she may hive from and form his or her own coven. Under the auspices of the high priest priestess, a priest priestess training covers three general areas. One, a attendance of classes and a study of a core area of specialization. B, active participation in the rituals as an officer or acting priest priestess. And C, personal work on the individual self, aka confronting the guardian. All rituals except another person's third degree initiations are open to the second degree priest priestess. The requirements for second degree initiate into the coven are: the initiate apprentice must have been a first degree in the coven for a minimum period of a year and a day. Often the stage between the first and second degrees takes several years to complete. The initiate is ready for second degree when the elders decide so. The initiate apprentice must have either completed all requirements for first degree in this coven or received second degree initiation in another Alexandrian coven, which the person has since left. In the case of B, the high priest priestess will contact the high priest priestess of the other coven to vouch for the accuracy of the initiate's claim. Next, the initiate apprentice must have demonstrated a willingness and ability to actively participate in rituals by attending as many as possible. This does not mean becoming a religious zealot, but it does mean putting a high enough priority on ritual that demonstrates its importance to the initiate. By being willing to both take on priest priestess roles in ritual and allowing others in turn to take these roles, by acquiring the ability to channel forces properly during ritual by behaving in ritual as is appropriate to the role she has for that ritual. Example, lending energy, leading the ritual, helping to guide others when appropriate, etc. Next, the initiate apprentice must have attended all coven classes that are required. Next, the initiate apprentice must have undertaken a core area of study approved by the coven elders and taught at least one class on the subject of the coven. Some examples are herbalism, shamanic techniques, healing, meditation, yoga, ceremonial magic, candle making, incense making, making of ritual clothing, etc. It should be something magical in nature that the person is interested in and actively practices, not an armchair study. Proficiency in at least one form of divination, such as tarot cards, I Ching. Next, the initiate apprentice must have spent a minimum of 3 months in a community service activity approved by the coven elders. Since the true goal of an initiate is to serve the gods, and since it is too easy and too common for pagans to be self-absorbed, community service is required for this coven. Examples are reading to the blind, answering on AIDS telephone hotlines, working in a battered women's shelter, volunteering at a hospital, serving food at a soup kitchen, etc. The service will be jointly agreed on between the initiate and the elders before it is performed. The only exception is if the initiate already works in a community service capacity. Next, the initiate apprentice must demonstrate comparative maturity and growth, usually accomplished through individual and internal work. Next, the initiate apprentice must have read, as a minimum, all the books required for the lower degrees, plus Real Magic by Isaac Bonowitz, The Sea Priestess by Dion Fortune, Moon Magic by Dion Fortune, The Way of the Word by Brian Bates, Psychic Self-Defense by Dion Fortune, and Harvest Home by Thomas Tyron. Next, the initiate apprentice should have continued his or her journal, grimoire, and Book of Shadows. Next, the apprentice initiate must own at least 4 main ritual tools: Adame, Wand, Chalice, and Pentacle. The initiate apprentice must have written a ritual which will be performed by the coven. The ritual should be written in a style similar to those performed by the coven, created by the initiate with guidance, modifications, and approval of the elders. Finally, the initiate apprentice must complete any additional requirements given by the high priest priestess. Again, this is not to trick the initiate, but is designed to help the initiate with any shortcomings that they have in his or her personal growth. These requirements will vary for different initiates, but will usually be the very thing she needs to tackle and is avoiding due to fear or discomfort. Okay. Next up are the classes, and these are not books. These are probably their topics that they're calling them, that the elders know of that particular tradition. Okay, next up are the classes. Now, these are not books to read. These are classes that previous elders have created and that they pass down through oral tradition. So we're just going to kind of go generally at what they are talking about here. The first grouping, they're talking about do's, don'ts, and protections. So that's obviously they're talking about how to handle magic and rituals, and if you make mistakes. Ritual notes 2 looks like they are talking about the SBATs, which is would be quite interesting to be a part of. Next, they got wiccan tools and weapons. It's interesting that they call these weapons as well. Now, of course, you got the Adame, and some traditions use swords, actually. and they are using a skull. So that is interesting that they got a few classes just talking about tools. Next is divination, and you can see they're talking about scrying, astrology, tarot. So there's multiple classes just for the divination. You got Wiccan herbalism, which would be good. Witch stuff, which is exercises that people should do. Witch stuff 2 is psychic healing, telepathy, deja vu, clairvoyance, astral travel, and dream work. Those are classes I would like to take. Then they got Witch Stuff 3, Songs and Chants. So that would be interesting and all of that. It could be very enjoyable. Witch Stuff 4 is crafts type. Because you have to learn how to make candles and making their papers and other things for ritual, especially if you are going to be a high priest priestess, because you have to learn how to do it before you can teach others. Next is creating talismans and amulets, which is interesting. Then you got spell work and traditional witch magic. That looks interesting. What is spell casting? There's ethics, which is important. The correspondences, talks about the colors, what gods, goddesses, gems, which is interesting. The witch's pyramid, to know, to will, to dare, to shut up. Oh, wow. Then we got the eightfold path. Now you can see that this covers a large area. So this isn't something where, a couple chapters in a book and you're good. Then they got the temple, the mobile Wiccan temple. That'd be interesting. Steve. All right, continuing on, we have ritual writing, then the personality 2 classes, the Kabbalah, ceremonial magic, then power and energy, channeling divine forces. Now that I would love to be a member of, to see, to experience. Then on the final group of classes, it's the workings of a coven, which I think people need to know. We are so wrapped up in individuals. We get so wrapped up in ourselves. I think some of us could use a little knowledge on coven structure and how everything works. Wiccan Mythology 3. Now let's talk about structure, some of the basics. Be cool. And then self-defense class. Enroll for a minimum of 3 months in a self-defense or physically challenged activity, yoga or etc. Because they want you to be in tune, physically as well as mentally and spiritually. And you see, this is something that I like to remind people. See how they're saying for at least 3 months? This shows that you cannot become a high priestess by reading a book, and 2 months later proclaiming it. There is this large list of requirements for you before you can even think of considering such a title. And we have to remember that we cannot give ourselves titles. We have to earn them. You can claim to be whatever you want, but unless there are other people that are willing to give you and support that title, that title means nothing. So I hope some people have learned a little bit more about what's required to become a second degree in many forms of Wicca and paganism. So everybody, take care, be at peace.